A lot, so I'm going to need a lot of participation from you. So the premise behind this, let me read the official one they gave you. So basically, it is the trope of the magical secret, is what we're going to be talking about. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that exact wording, it's the notion that if you're a supernatural being, or a supernatural character, or supernatural powers, you hide it from the people around you. And it's a super, super common trope, and it leads to some really interesting storylines. The topics we're going to primarily discuss are Charmed, Sabrina, Harry Potter, and Bewitched. Has anyone in here not familiar with at least 3 of the 4 of those? Is anyone familiar with all 4 of those? Bewitched is going to be very minor. We'll talk about why Bewitched is going to be minor in a moment. But we're also going to touch on other things. We're going to touch on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We're going to touch on, we'll see what our guys comes up with. We can touch on Grimm, yeah, definitely Grimm, that trope. It's the same thing there. So, starting off with Potter. Potter is the one that goes the heaviest into the rules. So we have the International Statute of Secrecy. And is everyone here a Potter fan? Beyond, okay. Does everyone here know what the International Statute of Secrecy are? Mm-hmm. Cool. So if you're unfamiliar, the statutes are the set of guidelines given to the entire wizarding world, led by an international wizarding council, that talk about how wizards are forbidden, or any magical creatures are forbidden from exposing the magical world. And there's lots of reasons, and this is a very, very important theme. This is a very, very important theme throughout the series, that we need to keep this secret, that one of Voldemort's strongest tactics in the world is breaking the secret. Because once that happens, there will be a magic versus non-magic war. Cool. And because they have this fear of non-magical people, it perpetuates this belief. So we're going to start specifically on Potter. Has anyone read the concept of American wizarding that's been showing up on Potter and their views on non-magical people? Anyone want to talk about that? I can. I know it's kind of early. Okay, so in the American wizarding world, I strongly suggest reading this on Potter more because it's long, but it's going to be super, super, super relevant for Fantastic Beasts. So you'll probably be confused if you haven't read this on Pottermore, because they pretty much clearly stated that this is not a movie that we're pandering for people that just casually like Potter. Like, you will be confused if you don't know about Ilvermorny going into the movie. You can probably catch on. But basically, the American Wizarding World has always been super hyped about non-magical folk finding out about them. At first you had the scavengers, who were Scourers, who were people, some of them were descended from non-magical people, some of them were descended from squibs, and they were passed down like their hatred and their jealousy. They're kind of like an army of filch. They're just a bunch of filches going around like killing magical beings. And the American Wizarding community was super afraid of them, and they got really tight, and it was really like taboo to talk to them, to marry them, but not necessarily illegal. And then it was until a point, and then it was around the 1800s, there was someone named Dorfus, and like, her name is Dorfus? Like, you gotta thank Joe for these names, because like, when you name someone Dorfus, like, their destiny in her writing was just to be like, yeah, Dorfus. So Dorfus got swept up by this handsome Muggle boy, or no-match boy, as they refer to them in America, and she was... Well, that's probably what happened when they broke up. So she was swept up by his charms, and she wanted to impress him. So she was like, hey, look what I can do, and exposed magic, and showed him her wand, and was like, like, look at all this cool stuff I can do. And it was a problem. She was actually the daughter of a MACUSA official, which is the Magical American Congress of the United States of America. Honestly, it was the Alexander Hamilton of the Wizarding World, because it was at the exact same time that it was the keeper of the American Wizarding Treasury, so like, she was Alexander Hamilton's daughter. And pretty much, this guy was a scout. He was looking for wizarding. He had a firm held belief that magic is wrong, magic is evil. He took the wand, he brought it to a newspaper, they waved it and it gave a mighty thump, which is really interesting because Muggles can't do that. And we just don't know if that's just a Pottermore mistake or that's actually something that we're hearing about. But she exposed magic, and after a lot of stuff, they decided to wipe memories, get rid of Fred, they thought it was a hoax. But the American Wizarding World, or American country I suppose, passed very strict laws based on Dorcas's policies. You do not talk to no-mages, you do not marry them, you do not acknowledge them, you live in separate worlds. And that'll obviously be super relevant in Fantastic Beasts. But the reason I started with that is because we have these separate worlds. And the constant theme that I'm going to be asking you all throughout this panel is, what do you think is going to be happening if these worlds were not separate? And we'll also talk about some ideas of a world where it's not separate, where they don't hide it, like Supernatural or Doctor Who, where they don't really make an effort in either of those shows to hide it. In Supernatural, like, they're not hiding the fact that, like, they're casting a spell. Like, witches are just, like, out there. Like, they do these things. People aren't aware of it, but they don't hide it. In Doctor Who, at least in the new Doctor Who, are some people here familiar with Doctor Who? It's geeky. Like, you kind of assume most people on Earth know about aliens by now. Like, there's kind of been giant UFOs in the sky. Yeah, we kind of assume they know.
Well, considering every Christmas they get invaded, so...
Yeah, every Christmas. I mean, but just back to Potter, we'll bring those back up in a bit. Then we have people read the Tale of the Beetle's Bard? Yes. Let's go. What about the Tale of the Wizard and the Hopping Pot? So, The Wizard and the Hopping Pot was written as a story. If you haven't read Tales of the Beetle's Bard, it is awesome. It is so cool. It's fairy tales from the Wizarding World. If you read Deathly Hallows or you saw the movie and you remember the Tale of Three Brothers, that is just one of the tales in this book. And they're supposed to be cautionary tales, or just like fairy tales, the way our fairy tales work, to don't go off the path in the forest sort of thing. That's what these tales are about. But The Wizard and the Hopping Pot is a tale of, like, don't trust Muggles, they'll abuse you. So we have the son of a wizard, so also a wizard, who decides to start helping Muggles using magic. Because that's probably, one would think, that's a pretty common thing a lot of wizarding kids ask. They're like, if we have these wonderful powers, why can't we just help everyone? And they created this story. It might be true, we don't know. But the Bard created this story about how once he started using his magic to help people, they just wanted more and more and more. Until, I liked it because I'm tired right now, his pop grew a foot at some point. Because he kept helping people and it only went away when he just stopped interacting with Muggles, basically. And it's really the cautionary tale of if you give these people what they want, it's not going to go well. So I'm going to use that as a transition to Charm. So who here is familiar with Charm? Charm is awesome. You need to try Charm out. Charm is really cool because it brings in pagan witchcraft elements with just normal, like, 90s feels and, like, family show with just a lot of sass. But so that, like, the idea of the magical divide is really permeated in Charm. It's really permeated in all these shows. But Charm is the show that they most are fighting. Obviously in Bewitched, she's not fighting at all. She's been a witch for, like, 500 plus years. Like, this is hard. And Sabrina, she's like, being a witch is cool. I'm just gonna tell the friends I like, because they only have like 3 of them. but Charms, these are late 20s, early 30s women who have lives. And it's like, honestly, everybody I've met where they're like, I want to tell someone, but I can't tell someone. And oh no, someone's knocking on the door, but there's a demon on the other side. What? Yeah, they're always getting in trouble with all these things, but they constantly were like, what if we told people? And there's episodes. There's episodes with parallel realities and time streams where it's like, what happens if the world knows? And people are abusing them, people are using them, and people are trying to kill them. And that's another main thing. We unfortunately live in a world where people would try to harm magical beings because they're different, which is very symbolic of the world that we actually live in. So we're looking at that. So I just want to open the floor right now to the question I posed before we move on to something else. Just in general, for all the fandoms, for all the tropes, do you think that it is important to keep this developed? Or do you think that there's ways we could get around it, with certain people we could get around it?
And this would make me more after the Fantastic Beasts movie,
Okay.
because we've seen with the European, like with Hogwarts and stuff, there are Muggles that know about witches and wizards, i.e., the families of like Hermione's family. They know she's a witch. They're aware of it.
Government
The
officials.
Dursleys, they're aware of it. From what I've read about the Fantastic Beasts is with the no-mages, the wizarding community in the United States has gone cold turkey because of the witch trials of Salem and stuff of no fractured, nobody knows. You do not get into a relationship with a no-mage or anything like that.
Yeah, we were talking about Dorcas before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. We were just talking about that. So yes.
It's that kind of, so it depends on the society.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose that depends on society. So there's a timeline. So, for instance, maybe. So you feel that perhaps the Halliwells would be a bit more readily accepted than.
Well, again, it's a different universe. Because the way it was written, it's like the people that were generally going after them were other demons or other magical beings. It's just like, and again, this is getting a little long-winded, but in Buffy, the Willow's a witch, and throughout her entire high school years, you don't think that anybody in the high school realizes who she is or what she does. But then there's that episode with and it's been a while since I've seen it, where there's kind of like the graduation.
Yeah, and you actually mentioned
where they
we're talking about Buffy because of that.
Where they actually kind of thank her for everything she's been doing. So
Yes,
it's like,
and
yes, they are aware.
Exactly, and that's why I mentioned earlier when we talked about Buffy, because Buffy is one of those, like, who, and what did I mention? I'll come back to it. Supernatural, where they really don't hide it. And Buffy especially, it's just like, yeah,
They're
like,
there.
you're going to be walking the streets, you're going to see me slay a vampire, and I'm going to walk past you. Like, I'm not going to hide the secret. I'm going to hide it from my mom because she'll ground me. But, like...
The one that, with Charm, it's almost set in the real world. Where if you're, okay, I'm trying to tell my boyfriend I'm a witch, well, he turned out to be a demon anyway, so he kind of knew. But when they get into other relationships, it's, unless they have one foot in there, like they're a white lighter or something like that, where they know what's going on, it's like, you can see magic out in the hallway right now, but your mind would just process it as, oh, it was just something out of the corner of my eye, it didn't happen.
And that's something that shows up in something like the Percy Jackson series, where we have the myth that veils this world. It's just something that you'll look directly at something
and not see it, but you see
like
it for
his
what your
sword is a
mind
pen.
perceives.
For those of you that are familiar with that. So that's an interesting point.
Did you also know what the charm, it's interesting because he was the white lighter, she's a bit wicked, and because they don't know who the white lighter is, and she's trying to hide his, and it's
Right.
they're both hiding each of his powers is one of the most funny things. And
Yeah.
on the rewatches.
And then of course they find out he's fixing a light bulb and levitating. I say something. And Charmed is really unique, I guess, in that facet that we're bringing in these real problems. Like, it doesn't stop at, oh, my boyfriend's gonna find out, and that could ruin my relationship, which is kind of where Sabrina leaves off. And that makes sense. Sabrina's not a high schooler and a college student, and it's not gonna go into those deeper things. And I think the scariest Sabrina episode is where she like takes down a vampire with like a ribeye steak. Oh,
Well,
like, yeah.
and this is from Once Upon a Time, just this last season, where they're in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to get, they need power of magic, so he gets up and stands on the fountain in front of the library, and is trying to get people to
Believe it.
believe, and they get it done, but then it turns out, well, everybody thinks it was just a special effects.
And it's interesting that in Once Upon a Time, they don't really care that people knew there was magic. Mainly probably because they can't actually get into storybooks.
Magic doesn't work outside.
Like, the whole world could go like crazy, but like, you can't enter our little bubble.
Yeah.
Though, of course, who knows if they can. Who knows if the entire world has magic. And we'll talk about that in a bit, because I do want to mention that. But with the thing I was mentioning with Charmed is there's assassination attempts. Our world is very, no, what's next word? Our world is very afraid of things that are different. And I think most of us could say that we wouldn't obviously like attack them, but there are people that would.
Yeah.
So, moving on, who wants to talk a little bit about Sabrina? Because I feel like I'm talking a lot. And you're enjoying Sabrina? Okay. Oh, enjoying talking, thank you. So Sabrina and Bewitched I'm going to talk about at the same time because they heavily imply that Bewitched is a spin-off of Sabrina. No, we'll reverse that completely. That Sabrina is a spin-off of Bewitched. It's not canon, they're different networks, they're different writers, but the rules seem to be fairly consistent. The naming is fairly consistent with the alliterations and just the way magic works, having the other dimension, having the council, having just like cute, fun things, having like the magical parrot that pops in. They're very similar shows. And they're both the really lighthearted ones. You never watched Bewitched or Sabrina and was like, I wonder who's going to be sacrificed today. Yeah, and I think that's what drew me into stuff like Charmed was because I was already into, when I was younger, Bewitched and Sabrina. I watched live, obviously, I didn't watch Bewitched live, but those were able to draw people in because they were nice, they were fun. This wasn't witchcraft. While these shows may be pitched as being dark and pagan, it's like there's literally Charmed. You could possibly make that argument, but in Bewitched and Sabrina, like they'll call it witchcraft. They'll say practice your witchcraft, but it's more like superpowers to a point. It's more just like reality warping abilities. They're not, and Charmed is natural, but they do need some pagan elements. Like they are drawing more from things. Like they have the book, they dabble in some dark things, but honestly, darkness exists. I'm fairly convinced that in the worlds of Sabrina and Bewitched, like darkness is not relevant. Like,
well, and the closest Bewitched ever really came to addressing like Darren was like, okay, let's just tell everybody, let's tell the world you're a witch. So Endora has a dream, makes him have a dream basically of like, what would happen if? And it's of course, the Air Force comes in and takes him away to Area 51 or, someplace where they're outside of society. They're behind a wall, basically.
Of course, they couldn't actually keep a witch. And that's the point, it's always
No,
right
but
to
keep
show. They
her,
always
but
try.
yeah, but again, you're talking about TV.
Yeah.
But the hysteria that would be behind if people, we're going to use you as a weapon.
Yeah. And I mean, that's also true. I mean, there's always that fear that if they were somehow able to learn to control, how to stop their magic somehow.
The acts to cure stuff they can't cure.
And that's where we started with that Wizard of the Hopping Top, because Charm is, Gabriel Page really struggles with why can't I just make a rhyme that something that rhymes with world hunger, and God, I can do it. Like their powers are virtually limitless until you extend into the world of the supernatural. If they wanted to turn every wall on Earth blue, they very easily could, because there would be no magic stopping them. But she could cure world hunger, and it's hard for her not to as a social worker. That is never something that's brought up in Sabrina or Bewitched.
Well, there's also, yeah.
Because that's a deep, what?
I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to put in. Go ahead.
Is it brought up? I don't believe it.
Huh?
I don't think it was brought up.
I can't hear you.
I don't believe it was brought up. We were going to say it was.
No, I was just saying that in Charm and stuff, they can't use their powers for their own personal gain.
Right.
And I haven't seen a lot of the Sabrinas,
Mm-hmm.
but there's really not that problem in Bewitched. It's like if they want to code.
Yeah, in Sabrina and Bewitched, that's why I kind of compare it more like superpowers. Like, don't expose us, but do what you want. Sabrina has a cute thing where you like can't actually make like brand name products. It's kind of the closest thing you can do to personal gain. Like instead of getting like a Versace handbag, you can't conjure one of those. You conjure like Versace. And it's just like whatever you do, you can only conjure knockoffs. Because the council has just implemented that rule. But then again, that's not a natural rule. That is a bunch of very powerful magical beings casting an interdimensional spell on everyone else, stopping them from doing it. I don't think the actual order of magic is like, nah, you're gonna get a knockoff. But I mean, that's really just to balance the playing field. It's why they care, I don't know. But Charm is really the one with the deeper themes. Is there anything that anyone wants to talk about before we move on? We'll keep circling back through all of them. With Sabrina and Bewitched, so specifically Bewitched, because I haven't touched on it the most. I think Bewitched is going to be the show that the most number of you in here haven't seen. Who in here hasn't seen Bewitched? Oh, that's cool. Who hasn't seen Sabrina? Wow, I'm so proud of everyone. So you can all like see the comparisons between them. Sabrina went more into this concept of the different lives and how she had her friends at school. Most of them knew because she didn't have that many friends. She finally made some friends in college who didn't know for a while. So that was interesting, where she had to keep that secret. But a reason that you could probably see that this in Bewitched, and you could probably guess this, is that Samantha didn't have a life. She didn't have friends, but beyond her magical friends. She was the housewife. She stayed home. She didn't have to hide as much because she didn't leave. She'd leave, and Samantha was very, very, very independent. She's always been hailed as one of the great female role models of that era. But it leaves something to be wanted. It's sure, like, she had this, but could she do more? Of course, the counter-argument is this is what she wanted. She'd spent 600 years being an autonomous, omnipotent being, traveling from planet to planet, making friends, doing all these things. And then she was like, I'm tired. I'm gonna sit at home and cook. Like, this was her choice to make. basically this is a holiday. Darren's gonna die. And then she's gonna be like, well, that was a fun century of my life. Or not even a century, that was a fun half a century. On to the next millennium. That's not gonna happen. Like, that's a really sad thought to think about. There's gotta be like some way around that. Like, a mortality spell, I don't know. Yeah?
I think there's a cool commentary about with Bewitched about a lot of the things she used her magic for was to like help with cooking and housework and stuff like that. And
But also how she didn't want to.
right.
She'd always be like, I don't want to do this, I want to do it by hand. And she'd be like, this oven is stupid. Just do it.
But like, I think there's a cool commentary in that too, especially with the era that the show was on. This huge wave of all of these products coming out that would help you with cooking, help you with cleaning, and this is going to make it easier, this is going to make it faster.
And there were lots of commercials, and we still see commercials today. There was one that was really recent. I don't know if you saw it. It was a year ago that it had the Bewitched theme song. And so we're going to the kitchen, and she's just snapping her fingers, and things are cleaning. And it's like, don't have magic? Buy this soap. Works like magic. And that was definitely a thing. It was, you don't have magical powers, but you too could do things like snap your fingers. But that makes it fun. And, but it's also like, because she was using her powers from a feministic standpoint, they're her powers. And, like, magic is integral to her. When you read Tolkien and Poland, so Lord of the Rings and the Golden Compass series. Yeah, it's the Dark Material. That's why it's the Golden Compass series. So his Dark Material is an E after dark. Let's look it up. Both of them have concepts of magic, but it's in them, especially in Lord of the Rings. You have the concepts of innate magic and what they kind of call backroom magic. The innate magic is what, in Lord of the Rings, the elves have. They are innate magical beings. The wizards, who are actually pretty much gods in physical form, they have innate magic. But then Saruman starts dabbling in backroom magic, or workshop magic, something like that. Dabbling with potions and shards and basically what most people would consider witchcraft, to kind of extend his power. It worked to a point, it kind of backfired. But all these shows, their magic is innate. And I think that's why we love them so much. It's like in Potter, it's like here. They're not going out and, like some shows that we've seen, and doing things. They're not praying to something, or they don't have some magical charm that gives them powers. It's in their blood, it's in their genetics, which I find really cool. And maybe next girl will have my genetics or whatever, because I've talked about it a long time. But when we go into like, her magic is her own autonomy, she is doing that. No man is giving that to her. She's able to snap her fingers, and through her own sheer will, we're having a woman who is changing reality, literally. So that's always been a very symbolic thing, sort of tangent off of the concept of separation. What do you think would have happened if the Stephens had let anyone? Because they're different. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a long show. It could have happened toward the end. They're different in the fact that no one finds out. They don't have that common trope of the person you tell. In Charmed, we have Darren.